Happy Wine Wednesday.
Hey,
Who's in?
Mish. How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm excited that
Good.
it's Wednesday and
Me
also
too.
my Friday.
Yay. Oh, you're going on vacation.
I am, which, by
That's
the
right.
way, pro tip, everyone needs to take a vacation,
Yes.
especially if you're in a cyclical career like me in tax where things are about to pick up and get crazy.
Good advice. Yes. Always have to take a vacation.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Mhm.
As always, we're going to start by chatting a little bit about the wine. So hopefully you guys were all able to pick up your bottle. This one is going to be a Vouvray coming from the Loire Valley. And one of the things I love French wines. That's no secret. I'm sure if we went back and pulled all the wine that we've been drinking over the past several weeks, it would have had a lot of French wines in there. I love Vouvray because I feel like it's a little bit lesser known. Vouvrays are always 100% Chenin Blanc, and they're one of the most versatile grapes that exist. And the Loire Valley is going to have a lot more classic expressions, and these wines are going to be really elegant. You're going to have some flintiness. It's on white clay soil mostly. And they're just going to be really delightful. A little bit, Vouvray is always going to be a little bit bigger in body. So this is not going to be like a zippy wine or like a porch pounder, if you will. But still really, really, really beautiful and elegant in this weather. And I would still say it doesn't have enough body to where it's going to kind of stop you in your tracks. But it is a little bit more interesting. This specific vintner has been around since 1669, the land where they've been harvesting these grapes. And Benoit Gaultier, he was the newest member of this family and has been recognized as one of the most talented Vouvray winemakers of his generation. And he's earned national awards, and the Wine Spectator has given him a 90 plus. So this is another really, really, really affordable bottle. So if you want to impress anybody that in your life who really cares about wine, this is definitely a really, really good pick. Beautiful summer wine. I love Vouvray. If you ever have the opportunity to drink sparkling Vouvray, a champagne alternative, it's also really beautiful.
Okay. Put that on the list.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Continue learning so much about wine with you.
Listen, just fake it till you make it whenever you go to these like family gatherings, right? Like you're probably tired of drinking the same old same, and you don't have to spend an arm and a leg to bring something more interesting.
Exactly. Yes. Hey.
Awesome. Well, let's get into our rose and our thorn for the week. Mish, what was your rose?
Okay, so let's see. So my rose of the week was I went to go see the Book of Mormon last night on Broadway, and it was so good. Like I was laughing during the whole thing, and like this is the first play I think I've actually seen like it within like the past few years, and I like missed going to Broadway plays. Just feel like all like the action and excitement. And my boyfriend's friends were here from Florida visiting, so we took them and gave them a little tour around the city also this weekend. So it was really a fun weekend. And then, but I guess it kind of leads into my thorn where there were a lot of late nights. So I missed out on a lot of sleep. And I think that might have actually been my thorn like a week ago or a few weeks ago. And my body, I'm just getting a little old for the multiple day going out late. And you miss sleep as I'm getting older.
Like, yeah, we're having like the same thorns recently because it's summer, and like summer is a season of excitement and everybody wants to do all the things. And Michelle and I both live in really exciting cities. So our friends always want to visit us. And as much as we love our friends, it does take a toll on the body.
It does. What about you? What's your rose and thorn?
My rose, it's so funny, like really similar. My rose was I went to this really awesome event on Sunday. It was a rosé magnum party. So there were 18 different varietals of, or varieties, if you will, of rosé, sparkling and still. And they did like a Hawaiian food theme, and it's really hot here. So they put like kiddie pools on the patio where you could like take your shoes off and put your feet in. And it was all you could eat, all you could drink. And it was just like the perfect cherry on the Sunday. And
that sounds so fun.
It was the best. And then my thorn was I'm reaching my social battery. Like I have done something social pretty much every day for the past like 2 months. And I'm a very social being, but I'm getting to the point now where I need to start putting walls up there and just relaxing. This vacation could not come at a better time. I'm going to read a lot. I'm going to sit on patios. Like I'm just going to chill. I'm excited for that.
What book are you bringing?
I actually just got a new book in the mail. I'm looking over to see it. It's called How Are You Really? It's by Jenna Kutcher. If any of you guys have read any of her stuff or listened to her podcast, she has an amazing podcast. I think it's called The Gold Digger. And I'm also going to be bringing Michelle Obama's new book, The Light We Carry. I always like to read memoirs in tandem with something else. So I read them a little bit slower, but I'm going to bring that book as well.
Cool. Exciting. Well, I hope you have a nice vacay and relaxing and recharge.
Give me both, sister.
Exactly. Alrighty. So now it's my favorite time of the week, where it's a quote of the week time. And I thought since our topic today is about female entrepreneurship, I thought we would get a quote from a female entrepreneur. So this week's quote is brought to you by Oprah.
The female entrepreneur.
Yes, exactly. The female entrepreneur. And it is, let's see. So follow your passion. And if you don't know what it is, realize that one reason for your existence on earth is to find it. So that was a really good quote, especially if a lot of you haven't found your passion yet, just know, it's out there and you are going to find it one day.
Yeah. And it's definitely not a linear process. Like this is something that I still try to tap into and touch base with frequently. We're actually going to be doing a podcast in the next couple of weeks about tapping into your unique ability and determining what it is that kind of fuels you and you're good at. So definitely a lifelong practice. So if you feel like you're kind of just like aimless in that regard in terms of like determining what your passion is, that's okay. That's part of the journey.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, okay. As Michelle mentioned, our topic for the week is managing money as a female business owner. And I can't think of anyone that is more qualified to talk to you about this than Michelle. Not only is she a business owner and she's a female, but also she's a money manager. So we're hitting all the high points. And I think like the structure that we're going to kind of go through for you guys is talking about some tactical tips. Theory is great, but when you're actually in the weeds and, running a business and doing things to move that forward, you need tips that you can actually take and implement. So we wanted to give you guys very tactical tips that were very easy to put in practice. And Michelle is going to start us off with our first tip and kind of walk us through the implications of it. So take it away, love.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. But shout out to you too. Jenny is a businesswoman herself who's great. And I'm sure she has done all of these tips that we're going to bring to you today. But our first tactical tip is to create a detailed budget. So this is, before you're getting into your entrepreneurship journey and thinking about what business you want to create a detailed budget, and it should outline all of your income sources, your fixed expenses, your variable costs, and also your savings goals. And if you need a reminder on how to, create that budget, you could go back to a few episodes where we did go into detail about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that is of the utmost importance, as Michelle was getting at, right? Because there are so many unforeseen expenses that come up whenever you're a business owner. So you have to control the aspects of that you can by determining what expenses you're going to anticipate. The worst thing that you can do is just like play reactive when invoices come in and when you have to start spending money, because then you're just kind of crossing your fingers and praying that you're going to have enough money at the end of the day. And it's easy when you're a smaller company to think that you've got a handle on it and you can kind of tag team that way. But there's no scalability to that. And as you start to scale, you're going to have a ton of growing problems.
Definitely.
And the next tactical tip is kind of in the same vein. It's separating your personal and your business finances. This is like 101, you guys. And this is something
yeah.
that, especially if you're starting as a consultant or a freelancer, I see people not do this all the time. They're like, oh, it's kind of just like a side gig. And then it turns into their full-time gig. And they're like, well, I'm the only employee. So all the money that comes into the business is my money. And I can kind of distribute it wherever I want to. And that's a huge mistake for a lot of reasons that we can dig into at a later date when we're actually talking about what those finances should look like in your business. But at the end of the day, first and foremost, when you become a business entity, you're responsible for taxes. So you need to know how much revenue you're generating so that you can know what your taxable income is, so you can chat with your CPA about it, so that you can avail yourselves to tax mitigation strategies. So that's first and foremost. You also need to know how much room you have in the budget to bring people on as you start to grow and scale, what your expenses are, what the wiggle room is when you start to feel stressed out. If you want to grow the company, can you even bring someone on? If you're not organized and everything is commingled, you don't know, right? You have no idea. So this is a lesson that, full transparency, I didn't learn for a long time. I was commingling, even though I knew I shouldn't have been, because I thought I could manage it. And then now we have things broken out to the nth degree, right? So there's the business that I run, my consultancy every day. Whatever comes in on that, I'm keeping track of it. And then we've got rental properties that have nothing to do with the business entity or even my personal finances. So we've got separate bank accounts for all of those. All the bills for each of those come out from each of those. Everything is separate. I never have to worry. I always pay those accounts first before I pay myself, so I can make sure all my liabilities are covered. And I pay myself a salary. I don't just pull. Yes, there are opportunities for me to take distributions, but I pay myself a salary every month that is going to take care of my bills and all my ancillaries, so that I know exactly what I need to bring in and exactly what needs to be taken care of from that perspective.
Good. I love that you guys go into so much detail and separate everything out. I think that's so important, especially when it's coming down to tax time. I tell you, I've seen, so many either like friends or clients who own businesses, it comes to tax time, we're helping them submit their docs to their accountant, and everything is commingled. So we literally have to sit there for hours pointing out, what's personal, what's business. And a lot of times you forget, it's a whole year, especially if you're not detailed with, keeping up with your receipts, expenses, things like that, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. And here's the deal, is it actually probably hurts you more than you would think, because you're not maximizing those deductions. And if you're not organized, you have to pay for somebody else to organize you. And so you're incurring those expenses from your CPA that's completely unnecessary. If you have clean books, you can just hand it over to them. And then you're in a position where all they have to do is what they're good at and stay in their lane.
Some advice that I actually learned is, start, from the beginning. Because once you start, it's easy to get into that routine. If you let a few months go by or the whole year, looking back and then having to go do it now, you're going to be so overwhelmed. So just start early, when you start from the get-go, from your business in the beginning. Just get very organized and detailed so you don't have an issue with that moving forward.
Love it.
So our next tip, you guys, is to maintain an emergency fund. We did do another podcast on this a few weeks ago, I think. So you know how much I love this topic, but everyone, should have an emergency savings fund, and not only on the personal side, but also for your business. If you're a business owner, unexpected expenses arise at any time for business owners. And you want to build an emergency fund that's equal to at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. But, if you ever need that money, you could tap into it there.
Yep. And I would add on top of that, this is a strategy that I employ, and I don't think that everyone has to, but I know myself that I'm more conservative. So I have an emergency fund for myself, and then I have an emergency fund for my business. And I think that's best practice, right? Because you're going to have expenses that are incurred in both, and you need to make sure that you are saving for a rainy day for both of those.
Yeah, exactly. Super important.
Yep. And then also, you guys, the next one is that we definitely need to be regularly monitoring cash flow. And I know that sounds super intuitive and obvious, but it's really easy to let this slip through the cracks. So it's imperative that you keep a close eye on your cash flow to ensure that the money is flowing in and out appropriately at the right time, and that you're actually capturing all the money that you're due for your services. This is something that you literally can lose sight of so quickly, but you need, especially if you're in a services industry and you have payments that are due and there's late penalties, right? How are you ever going to keep track of those late penalties if you're not tracking the money in and money out? This is something I was guilty of early in my business, where I would invoice my clients and I would get so busy in the work that I didn't actually take time to invoice them. And then they would all pile up and I'd have to be remembering, well, what did I do for this client? Going through emails, disastrous. And I know there are times that I miss things that I should have been invoicing for. So my answer to this is systematize. Take the time early in your business to pause once a week, once a month, what have you, to put together a system and delineate billing and leverage a software to help you with this. Like, if you're tracking these expenses and you have a system in place where you're constantly pouring in to make sure that everything is up to date, it's not going to be as stressful whenever you're doing reconciliation at the end of the day.
Right. Exactly. And another tip I'll give to you guys is make sure you're regularly checking your banking accounts, whether that's your personal or business. So no like hidden fees show up. I've seen so many times where people wait until the end of the year and then they look through their monthly statements and they realize, oh, maybe like my bank charged me a fee. You know, it's super important to do that every month so that if you do see something come up, you could dispute it or see what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our next tip for you guys is to seek professional financial advice. So if you're not, well-versed in finance or accounting, consider consulting with a financial advisor. I remember once I was talking to my dentist and he just opened up his own private practice. And he actually said to me, he was like, I went to dental school. I didn't go to business school. So when I opened my practice, I had no idea how to run a business successfully. So he went out and sought help in doing that.
I love that. And that's honestly the majority of business owners, right? Especially if they're in the creative space or they're in the healthcare space, they're not going to know all these things. You're not going to know all these things. And that's okay. You need to get professionals that can help you with that.
Exactly.
And that goes for CPAs as well. That's one of the most imperative relationships you can have as a business owner, because they're going to be able to give you your tax landscape. And that's the number one thing I see, and I'm sure Michelle sees, that hits business owners over the head in terms of a bill that they were not anticipating. So that's something that you definitely need to be at the forefront of and shopping around for.
Right. And as Jenny was saying before, also, if you're not good with all of this, hire a bookkeeper. It will help you tremendously so they can keep all your books and you don't have to worry about that.
100%. And that leads into our next tip, which is to negotiate and shop smart, right? Sometimes things can be so stressful in the sense that you're working with somebody and you're like, oh, this is a need, I need to fill it. And then you just hire the first person. Take the time on the front end to make sure they're a good fit, because it's going to be so much more difficult the longer that you wait. So make sure that you're negotiating contracts if you can. Ask them if you can pay for everything up front. Ask them if you can have a longer term and get a break on the fees. Work with different suppliers and make sure that you're, taking advantage of insurance, because that's something that a lot of businesses need that they forget about. So all of these things, every dollar is important on an entrepreneurial journey. So you need to do everything you can to make sure that you're keeping as many of those dollars in your pocket as possible.
Oh, definitely. Very good there. Our next tip is to diversify your revenue streams. And relying heavily on, say, like one client or one revenue source, it can be actually very risky. What happens if this client or revenue source goes away, then you're kind of left from square one. So you want to diversify your income streams to mitigate the impact of any potential downturns or changes in the market.
Yep. And I think to that point, right, a lot of times if we started in the consultancy arm, We can put ourselves in a position where maybe we have one really large client, and then that puts you in a position where if anything happens or there's relationship fallout there, it can really impact your business. So one of the things that I always try to do is make sure that I'm constantly filling the pipeline and networking to get as many clients in the door as I possibly can. I'll grow first, and if there's a need in terms of the work, I will hire somebody. There's always a solution. And then also just making sure that you're keeping your eyes and your ears open for alternative service lines that are maybe ancillary or complementary to what you're already doing. I have found that especially in professional services, there are so many consulting arms that can tie into what you're already doing that can be money-making opportunities for you. And if you feel like you don't have the expertise to kind of tap into that, you can find a who for that. This is something that I resisted a ton in the beginning of my business. And now we have a ton more service lines because I was able to see what was needed in the market and then find a who if I didn't know how to do it. Awesome. And then the other one is the next one that we're going to talk about is very, very obvious, just based on the tone of this podcast, but invest in your personal development. Okay. So this is something, learning is a lifelong process, especially if you choose to become an entrepreneur. You can never put yourself in a position where you're not growing and changing and you're stagnating. When money's tight, you can leverage books and podcasts. We live in the information age. So there's literally so much information at your fingertips that you can get without having to sit in the room or pay from individuals. And then you start to level up your business and you start to get a little bit more revenue. This is when you should start going to conferences and joining professional networking groups and reaching out to people to see how can I put my money to work so that I can change my mindset to take me to the next level. I took a huge step in this category this year by investing in Strategic Coach. And my mentor actually called me and said, he asked me, how much did you make in your business last year? And I told him, and then he said, all right, well, then you need to sign up for Strategic Coach. It's literally a no-brainer. You should be investing 10 to 20% of your income every year back into your personal development to make sure you can take it to the next level. So that completely shifted my mindset from, wow, that's a huge sticker prize to, wow, that's a worthwhile investment. So just continuing to do that.
Yeah, always want to invest in yourself. And what I like to do is, work on both my personal development and business development. Like, you could separate the two. So what I'll do is, say if I'm like every day, I'll try to listen to like at least 30 minutes of a podcast. If I can, I would like to listen to one in both categories. So what I'll do is I'll look for a business one in my field. That way I'm listening to other like-minded individuals who say like have gone through things that I'm seeing every day, new advances in the industry. Always want to keep up, within your field. And then also for my personal development, I'll listen to a podcast in that realm. And like just to keep me, I feel like also it motivates me. Like when I start this like early in the morning, I'm like motivated for the day. It's like, okay, this like gets me going.
Yeah, absolutely. It carries over.
Exactly. Okay. So we want to talk about practicing work-life balance, which is a huge one, especially Jenny, got it right. She's going vacay next week. So she's practicing work-life balance and we all
need am.
Yeah. And you need to be really mindful about it. And I think we talked about this before. You could schedule your vacations. Like what I'll try to do is schedule like a mini vacation, maybe like once a quarter, and then like a bigger trip once a year. And going on that trip really just recharges me. And I try it was very hard in the beginning, but I've learned to kind of just drop like all my work and just like really focus on, the present and being where I am and who I'm with, and not thinking about, what's going on in my email inbox or what do I have to do when I get home. So that's been like a game changer for me once I like realized that, it's okay to take a break.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of Michelle, some people would think that this is really aggressive, but I made it a goal 2 years ago to take a quarterly vacation and 2 big trips a year and 1 2-day weekend trip a month. Okay. And I know that sounds like a lot for people, but I know myself well enough to know that I work very hard and I need to supplement that with rest. And that is how I show up the best, is when I actually take that structure. And I'm not perfect at it every single month, but I do try to be cognitive of that and making sure that I'm actually putting that as a priority. And it has done wonders for my mentality whenever I return to work.
Right. And then also, I feel like if you're overworking, I feel like you're going to burn out very quickly. And I, have been a victim of this many times, like in my career. I would just like work, every day, 10 p.m., working Saturdays and Sundays. And I just got to a point and I was just so burnt out that I didn't really even know like what like I was doing at one point. I was just like going through the motions. And that's not good for yourself or your clients or your business. You want to be sharp and on point, especially when you're making decisions about your vision, about your business, and also if you're working with clients.
Absolutely. The next one is something that I think is getting a little bit more traction throughout corporate America right now, but me and Michelle find that it's really, really important. And that is promote financial literacy amongst employees. If you have employees, you should consider offering a financial literacy program so that they can be better at managing their money, so that they can increase, the cash in their pocket, so that they can invest in themselves and continue to level up. Financially stable employees are more likely to be productive and engaged and less likely to want to leave you. And then you should reward them as such, right? If you have employees that are doing a good job for you, the best way to repay them is to pay them, but also to give them, other benefits, like learning how they can grow their money, learning how they should put their money to work. Like these are conversations that we should have, especially if you're in the financial sector, because the better you are at handling your own house, the better you will be at advising other people.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen some companies, what they'll do is they'll, bring in, say, the advisor that they're working with, or even like an advisor associated with their 401k or other employee benefits, and just give like mini presentations to their employees. And it helps a lot. A lot of employees, they might not know how their 401k is being invested, or even, what a 401k is, or the guidelines for theirs. And I thought, that was super helpful for them.
Yeah.
And also, like Jenny was saying, like, they feel valued, I think, as an employee, which will lead to better employee retention.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because I've seen this play out a lot in the different firms that I've been at, where people will have employees who are amazing employees and they'll ask for a raise, and the raise will be, above what the company wanted to pay. And they won't meet that person where they're at. They'd say, you know what, I'm going to cut my losses and I'm going to go hire another employee. That opportunity cost is insane. That is the wrong way to go about it, right? If your employee deserves a raise and they're asking for a reasonable raise, then you should seriously consider it, right? Because again, they're going to remember that you treated them well, and then in turn they will treat you well, and they will do good things for your company. And, not to mention, it's just the right thing to do, right? Like, why would we want to create a revolving door in our business? You should care personally about the people that you work with.
Exactly. If your employees are valued, they're going to look out for you and help you, succeed, because in return, they're succeeding and they're leveling up also and growing. They're not just staying stagnant. Whereas, we don't want to be in our comfort zone, always want to be leveling up.
Exactly.
Leads us into learning to hire and delegate early and often. I've learned, this is a big one. So early on in my career, I thought I had to do everything. And also because, as you all know, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I thought, I had to like micromanage myself and I had to be doing all the things. So I had to learn that, no, there may be someone better at doing this than myself. And once I learned that and was able to delegate these other tasks to other people, I got to actually focus on what I love to do the most.
Love that. Love that. You guys, I never understood the value of low impact versus high impact tasks until very recently, when I started to learn the art of delegation. And it is imperative that if you have any hope to grow your business, you learn this activity. You have to master the art of delegation, and you have to know when to make strategic hires. And I'm going to tell you a secret. It's always before you think you should. Genuinely. And you have to put yourself in a position where you're doing more activities that are going to be revenue generating for the company. And the best way to do that is to pass those tasks off to somebody else who is capable of doing them.
Right. Yeah.
And then the last tactical tip that we have for you guys is celebrate milestones. This is something that we as a culture, I don't think are very good at, especially in the corporate sector. You have to acknowledge and reward yourself for achieving financial milestones, personal milestones, morale milestones, whatever it is. Any sort of success in business or in life needs to be celebrated. This is a lesson that I really learned at one of my last entrepreneurial workshop sessions, because we went in there and I remember thinking when I walked in, like, oh man, I didn't really accomplish that much this quarter. And then the first activity that we did was writing down all the things that we had done and accomplished that quarter. And I was like, wow, I never really put it on paper. And I definitely wasn't celebrating those successes in the moment. It's imperative. It's not only good for motivation of everyone around you, but it's good for your well-being and your capability of continuing on and forging forward.
Exactly. And I think that also ties into your work-life balance. I think, I used to do this too, but once I would hit a goal, I wouldn't stop and just celebrate that. I would just be thinking, okay, what's next? What's next? And then
future tripping.
Yeah, future tripping. Exactly. Yeah, it would just future trip and just think, okay, like, that was that goal, that's done. I'm going to the next. And I've learned, to just take some time and celebrate, even if it's like even a 10-minute, like if I did something small throughout the day, I just pat myself on the back and like take time to acknowledge it. It makes you feel better about yourself too. I think it boosts your, self-esteem and confidence.
It does.
It's there. Okay. And then to end our podcast here this week, we just wanted to give you guys some gender biases that we've seen exist, especially for female entrepreneurs and around money, managing money as a female. The first one that we've seen is negotiation bias. This is just, sometimes females will get less favorable terms when they're negotiating salaries or business deals just because we are females.
Yeah, and this is something, you guys stay tuned. We're actually going to be talking in a couple of weeks about how to maximize your salary and ask for a raise. And this is something that as a female, I personally struggled with for the longest time. And there obviously is a very real gender pay gap, but that doesn't mean that we can't equip ourselves to be able to have these crucial conversations.
Definitely. Okay, and then our next gender bias is credibility bias. So this is, I've seen this in my past too, where I feel like others will, question your expertise or business decisions just because you're a female, or if, they're just used to working with males or prefer males, they may deem you, less qualified.
Absolutely. And again, don't let that stop you. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, the next one is networking bias. And this is the very untrue, but I'm sure that it plays out, conception or notion that it might be more difficult for females to network in a male-dominated field, and more difficult to make connections. And what I say to that is it's actually women are just inherently better at connecting with humans. And you shouldn't let that fear of being in a male-dominated field circumvent you from making those connections, because a lot of times you're the breath of fresh air that everybody in that group is looking for.
Definitely. And that also ties in well to our next one, which is customer bias, which is very similar, except now it's with, say, like your clientele or customers. Some people may have their own gender biases, and that's them. You can't change their thoughts or control them, and that might influences them, not to work with a female business owner or, in a female business. So, but just don't, I would say don't take it personally. It's just their gender bias and you can't control that.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that we're moving away from a lot of these biases. We're just chatting with you guys about them to let you know that they exist so that you can weaponize yourself against them.
Right. Exactly.
And the last one is going to be access to funding. And this is something that I'm really excited about. Historically, female entrepreneurs would face challenges obtaining funds for their businesses because, investors wanted to go with more tried and true investors. In their mind, that's a male business because that's what has succeeded in the past. I feel like we're getting a lot more momentum now where female business owners are succeeding, and there are even grants for women, female founded businesses. So I'm hoping this is something that changes in the landscape, but definitely wanted to touch on that for you guys.
I definitely think it is, especially with so many more females, taking on that entrepreneur role. I think we're, like I said, like we run the world.
Who run the world?
So, exactly. Well, as Beyonce says best. So I think it is definitely changing. We have, some hopeful times ahead of us.
I'm very excited. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We hope that was helpful. Like we said, our aim is always to give you guys some tactical tips that you can put to practice in your business and in your life. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to plan a bucket list vacation. So you guys should definitely tune in for that one. I'm very excited. We're going to be drinking rosé for these hot summer days as well. So it's just going to be a ton of fun.
It's going to be very fun. I'm so excited and can't wait. Well, Jenny, have fun on your trip and, try to unplug and relax. And we will see everyone next week for our Next Wine Wednesday.
See y'all on the flip side.